Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
Angelico was famously commissioned to create the San Marco frescoes by Cosimo Medici. As bankers to the papacy, the Medici family were fabulously wealthy. The notion of usury, however, the lending of money for profit, was still deemed a sin in the collective imagination, and members of the emerging mercantile class often sought to offset their sins by commissioning works of art for church and state. Famously, and 100 years earlier, the Giotto school had been commissioned by Enrico Scrovegni, son of Reginaldo Scrovegni, to create at vast expense the exquisite fresco cycle that adorns the Arena Chapel in Padua. Dante had been quick to see through the attempted manipulation, designed to simultaneously appease God and garner favour with the church and ordinary folk, and he had placed Enrico's wealthy father in Canto 17 of his Inferno for his notoriously ill-gotten gains. Cosimo de Medici, however, was a genuine art lover, and many of the frescoes commissioned at San Marco were for the private cells of the monks, fully developed works that no one, save the single inhabitant, would ever see. He also had his own cell at San Marco, where he could retreat from the pressures of life. To see these works of art solely in terms of self-serving virtue signalling to both God and the people is to miss the higher point of the Renaissance completely. There is always a dark side to the psyche, of course, yet the patronage of the Medici family, especially that of Cosimo and later his grandson Lorenzo, called the Magnificent, reflected a genuine attempt to elevate the soul. And in the space of just a few decades, they transformed the face of their country, artistically, architecturally, and philosophically. It was Cosimo, through his sponsorship of the architect Brunelleschi, who not only reintroduced linear perspective to the art world of the day, but also found a way to create the classical dome of the cathedral in Florence, a structure that had stood incomplete for many decades, waiting for someone to figure it out. The technology had been lost, as you know, after the fall of the classical world. It was Cosimo who sponsored the complete translation of the works of Plato from Greek into Latin. It was Cosimo who, together with Ficino, created the Florentine Academy with its great library of illuminated books. Between them, Cosimo and his grandson, sponsored Fra Angelico, Filippo Lippi, Botticelli, Leonardo da Vinci, and Michelangelo. These architects of the Renaissance sought to harmonize both worlds. Cosimo, Lorenzo, and Ficino, fervently believing the treasures of the classical world were not at odds with Christianity. Thomas Aquinas and Dante had demonstrated this much earlier with their artful blendings of Christian and Aristotelian ideas. Now came Plato and the humanist values of goodness, truth, and beauty. These souls were clearly responding to a great sea change in the collective consciousness of the day. Something in the stars maybe. Ficino was one of those now rare creatures who was not only a philosopher, but an astrologer and a priest as well. Such was the vision of the times. And in a sense, and returning to the Annunciation, we can see clearly how the image of the angel Gabriel, announcing the coming of a new light into the world, alongside Botticelli's Birth of Venus, more of which later, so perfectly reflect these times.